Hey YouTube, I'm Jacob Beach.
And I'm Mariah Beach.
And we're here with the Preppers Bunker Outdoors, your original weekly Alone commentary, to talk to you about Alone Season 2, Episode 1. Stay tuned and check it out. Alright guys, so in this episode we got to see day 1 for Desmond, Larry, Mary, and Tracy. This episode will be named Desmond's episode because he's the one who tapped, so we'll get to him last. First, let's talk about Larry.
Well, Larry seemed like he had a hard time getting started. He was dropped off in a place with a beautiful creek or a spring. So we had a great water supply, but he said he didn't really have a whole lot of level land, and he had to do a lot of crazy climbing through really steep terrain. And I have to say, at some point, I would have been like, and I guess he kind of did, he got really, really frustrated. But I would have been like, okay, this is just going to keep going uphill. I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to go another way. So he had a little bit of a rough start, I'd say.
Every contestant is placed in an area that in one way or the other is equal to every other contestant, but each one has its own challenges. So obviously fresh water was very easy for Larry, but he had very challenging terrain. And so, I think that what a lot of people don't realize is that being there on your first day, it's got to be very, very stressful, and it's got to be very easy to get frustrated, especially being that I grew up in that area. I know what it's like to be wet, to be tired, to be stressed, and to be fighting with some stupid bush. It's about enough to make you lose your mind. But I think that in general, Larry Roberts is a pretty level-headed guy, and I think that he's going to get through this and do better in the future. I think he just had a rough first day.
Yeah, and something else that I like about him and that I noticed is it seems that he's very truthful to himself, and he's willing to, judge himself. Like, okay, I know that this shelter was crappy, or, he's willing to critique himself, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, survival, everybody says it, that survival is all mental. And so being able to know that you did something wrong is very important, but what's more important is the ability to go back, see that you did something wrong, and fix it. I think Larry is going to be a very strong contender. I think he had a hard first day, and I think that he's going to do well.
Absolutely, I agree.
Alright guys, so next we're going to talk about Mary. Mary had it a little bit tough as well on her first day on the island. She got wet off the bat.
They dropped her off, looked like in the water. I'm just going to say that would piss me off. I would be so mad. I would definitely say, she said that she had a sleeping bag that was down. I definitely would not have chosen to bring something like that. Everything I would have brought with me would have been as waterproof as it could be, or water resistant. But she got soaked, basically.
Yeah,
and when you're in a situation like that, or an environment like that, where everything is so wet and so damp, I mean, her stuff may never dry properly. If you remember back to season 1 with Mitch, his gear started to get moldy. So she could be looking at some issues similar to Mitch, and that really is a bummer. That her stuff just got soaked from the beginning and then throughout the night, and then all of the tinder that she had prepared the day before was all soaked. I would really try to set up a large shelter where I could have, my wood on the inside, a place to sleep, a place for a fire, and have a place that was dry like that. And I would definitely look for a place that, had that wasn't a whole lot of brush where I wanted to set up. Kind of try to find a clear spot. I know that can be, game trails and stuff, but for me, it's almost, worth it to have something a spot where I can feel comfortable and to, have a dry spot.
One thing that was interesting, she got very wet. She mentioned that she was going to have to get a fire going. And Larry got his fire going, but we didn't see Mary get a fire going. And that, if that trend continues, will be something that gets very difficult. We know in season 1, people didn't get fires going, just didn't last very long. So that's something that I'm really hoping that she's going to be able to accomplish and excel at, and hopefully get all of her stuff dried out. The down is a great choice if you can stay dry, because it's such a good insulator. I mean, it's incredible for its weight, for its size. It's really a good quality stuff. But and your first shelter the first night, in my opinion, is not that important. My first night, I wouldn't be worried that much about shelter. But the one thing that I'm always worried about is how the water is going to be moving beneath your shelter, because the water above your head is easy. The water coming in and around you is what's difficult. And I know from experience that waking up soaking wet is just the worst. And you could see that on Mary. You could see how much of a toll that took. It's brutal, and it's something that if you're not used to it, even if you are used to it, it's really hard.
Definitely.
So hopefully she'll get that fire going.
Yep.
All right, guys, next up we have Tracy. Tracy's a very interesting contender on this show, because if you saw a group of people who might be survivalists, you wouldn't point her out as someone that you think is out there doing all this hiking or survival stuff, but she is. I was very impressed with Tracy in this episode because of her mind. She seemed like she kept it together pretty good, and she was thinking about stuff.
Definitely. So far, from this episode, I know we didn't get to meet everybody, but so far, I think Tracy is my favorite that I met, or that we got to see on the show. When I saw her having to say goodbye to her family and then to her dog, I got a little bit emotional, because obviously I have dogs that I love and that I'm very attached to, and that would be hard to leave your family, and then a dog, like I said, it's her best friend, so that would be really, really difficult. So I got a little emotional there. Not crazy, but I did a little bit. But she seemed like she handled everything really well. I liked the way she made her shelter. I really like that she put a tarp underneath right off the bat. I guess it was, I don't know, not last September, but maybe a little bit before that. We were filming for season 1, and I was talking about our bug out experience. And that was my first time sleeping on the ground, with nothing underneath me, and I felt very, very uncomfortable. So I definitely think for me, having something at the bottom would just automatically make me more comfortable. It's going to make you more dry. So that is definitely something that I would want to have, is something underneath there. Let's see, what else did Tracy do?
Well, one thing that she did that I think was unique was she was looking at the trees around her.
Oh, yeah.
Vancouver Island can be a very windy place. The weather can get really crazy. And so she's thinking ahead. She's looking above where she wants to do her shelter.
Definitely.
In my opinion, for her first night, like Mariah said, I think that she had the best shelter. And she mentioned that she would have difficulty running, and she's already thinking about it. You know, it's already in her mind.
Right.
She's thinking ahead,
Right.
and that's very important. So yeah, for me, definitely Tracy was a very impressive person, and you know, if all I saw was an alone poster with everybody from there, she would have not looked like she fit with everybody else. But from watching the first episode, you see a little bit of who she is and that she really does fit in there.
Definitely. And I want to say one more thing. She really handled the night really well with all the sounds that she heard. I'm not going to lie, that would probably really stress me out or even scare me. I don't like to be alone. I really don't. Especially in the dark. So she really handled it well. You know, hearing all those different noises and, you know, being able to sleep and, you know, not being intimidated by it. I was really impressed with her this episode, definitely.
Yeah, so that was really great.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Lastly, this is Desmond's episode, and Desmond did tap before the night came.
Yes. You know, I don't think Desmond knew what he was capable of. You know, he talked a lot about not being afraid of bears and even wrestling with bears. I mean, I know he was joking, but he still didn't seem like he was, you know, intimidated by that. But in reality, he was very intimidated by it. And I think that it cost him being there. I think it was the bears. And he didn't really know what he was capable of.
Well, and that's the thing, is that I'm sure that Desmond was capable of staying there. He was.
Yeah.
He might not have had that particular experience before, but he could have stayed there.
Yeah.
Desmond's a big guy. He knows a lot of stuff. And if he had to, if his family was on the line, if his life was on the line, whatever the case may be, he could have done it. But he didn't have that experience, and I think he let himself talk himself out of it. Now, you know, Desmond's going to get a bad rap. And especially from people who don't know anything about his situation, about the situation on Alone, or anything about survival. Because to someone who doesn't know, it's all easy. In your head, you think, man, I could do that, whatever. Right. And that might be a little bit of what was happening with Desmond before he got there with the bears and everything else. Watching season 1, he might have been like, yeah, it's no big deal. And then it was a different case. But the biggest thing, we keep talking about survival from a mental aspect. And I think what happened to Desmond is that he let himself talk himself out of it. You know, it's a pretty crazy situation, and not many people are putting themselves out there in survival scenarios.
Yeah.
You know, I do it fairly often, and at first it was crazy for me too, but it's something that I've become more accustomed to. But with that being said, put me in a new environment, in a new place, new people, new challenges, it's still going to be stressful, and people need to realize that. So it's a bummer to see him go. I would have liked to have seen what Desmond had to offer. But, you know, hopefully he can take his experience on Alone and use it to better himself, better his family, better his community. And the biggest thing when you fail at something like this in life is learning from it and finding out how you're going to make it work for you. That's where the cream rises to the top.
And you know, another thing, on season 1, we never really had anybody mention the money. and the motivation, what they would use it for. And Desmond, did mention that. And that's what I would be thinking about. If I were out there, by myself, that would be a huge motivation for me. Like, what my husband and I could do with money like that. We'd set up our off-the-grid farm. That's what we would do with it. But it's going to be interesting to see who else, brings up money as a motivation. Because there's nothing wrong with that. It'll just be interesting. Season 1, we didn't really have anybody that talked about it. So, we'll see. Yeah.
Well, as we said, we are the original weekly commentary. That means that a lot of the guys from the show will probably end up seeing and maybe even commenting on our videos. So go ahead, hit up the comments. Maybe you'll get a chance to talk with one of them. Tell us what 10 things you would bring, what you would do different, how you would survive, and we'll have a nice little discussion. I look forward to it, and I hope to see you guys next week. Thank you very much.
See ya.